Greetings to colleagues at the WISE Summit. I'm sorry I can't join you, but this with the technology, we can at least be close enough in terms of talking about the big issues that you're facing. My name is Michael Fullan. I'm at University of Toronto. I work as the Premier's advisor in Ontario and on a number of other things on around the world on system reform. What I want to talk to you today about is whole system reform, we call it. It's how do you focus on improving the entire system? This is the whole province, the whole state, the whole country. All of the schools, raise the bar, close the gap. The focus is on the entire entity. And in particular, I want to talk about what we now call the right and wrong drivers. So you'll see this slide on the screen now. And this notion of wrong and right drivers I'm going to pursue in the next 5 or 6 minutes with you. A good way of positioning it. You'll see my website, michaelfullan.ca. You can download this paper on wrong drivers, and you can also look at some of the other things that we've been developing. So let's take a look at what I mean by this. The whole system reform, I've already said, it is about the whole focus. We first got into this in 1997 when we evaluated, a group of us from Ontario was commissioned to evaluate the literacy numeracy strategy in England. And we did this up close and learned some do's and don'ts, let's call them. On the don't side, obsession with targets and punitive accountability, big problem for moving ahead strongly enough. On the positive side, focus, small number of ambitious goals, and capacity building. So that's what we took, and the timing was fortunate because in 2003, the current Premier of Ontario, Dalton McGuinty, was elected and began to hire me as his advisor. So we took a very stagnant system, a lot of conflict between the teachers and the government, and said, how do we bring about whole system reform from this starting point, given what we've learned from England? So Ontario itself, a quick picture, it's the largest province in Canada, more or less in the center. 13 million people, 5,000 schools altogether, 2 million students within that, and 72 districts. So what we did was do a number of things, and I'm jumping ahead now to 2011, the results. We had big success, high proficiency in literacy numeracy, moving it from a very low performance to significant and still on the move, still more to be done, obviously. Secondly, big success at high schools. Secondary schools are hard to reform, and we've been able to move that forward. You can see the figures, 68 to 81%, still climbing. We expect it to be 83% this year, and so on. And then the next phase, there was just an election a couple of weeks ago, and Dalton McGuinty was reelected. And so we are going deeper into early learning. This is full day for 4 and 5 year olds. More student engagement, more development of the profession, which I'll come back to, more focusing on higher order skills, the role of technology, and pushing, building on our results. So if you look at this notion of right and wrong driver, simple definition. A wrong driver is a deliberate policy force that has little chance of achieving the desired results. I'll talk about the details. There are 4 of them in particular that I think are problematic. And then a right driver, the opposite of that, is a strategy and a policy force that does achieve the desired results. Clearly, I'm building this from our own learning in Ontario. We use the right drivers, I guess I'll say. This is confirmed around high performers around the world, Singapore, Finland, and so forth. So this is the track I want to follow. If you think of the drivers themselves, on the left-hand column here, you'll see what I call the 4 wrong drivers. It doesn't mean they have no place whatsoever, but it does mean don't lead with them. So accountability doesn't work as a major effective lead reform. So I'm going to come back to each of these, so I won't comment on them in detail on this slide, but you'll see them in a moment or two in terms of each of these. So criteria, I want to put this up front. Here's my criteria for whether a driver measures up or not. Does it foster intrinsic motivation of teachers and students to put in the effort? Does it really result in that? Not necessarily the first week, but definitely building into that. Does it engage educators and students in the continuous improvement of instruction and learning? Does it inspire collective or teamwork? A big factor in our success was developing what we now call social capital, collective or teamwork as opposed to individuals toiling away. And fourth, does it affect all teachers, the 100%, what I call the whole system reform? The culprits, external accountability, again, I say it has a place, but it doesn't have a place as a leader at the reform initiative. Individual development, kind of an odd way of putting it, but if a lot of the strategies focus on individual competencies, individual quality of teachers and leaders. I see that in the equation, but I don't see it as leading the reform that we are getting. Technology, great powerhouse, but not as a front end, but in the service of, you have to get the pedagogy, the instruction straight. And then ad hoc strategies as opposed to a coherent set of strategies that work on the same thing, very important part of this. So if we look at, as I said, it's a question of sequence, so accountability comes in later more effectively, but at the beginning you have to build capacity. It's a question of the wrong drivers not being prominent too early in the part of it. So let's look at each one briefly in turn. No system in the world, Singapore, Finland, Korea, wherever you want to select, Canada, in the world has ever achieved whole system reform by leading with accountability. Accountability being the punitive responses to low performance, whether schools or individuals. It's an interesting finding from I'm just going to show you from last year's study from Moorshed, which is the McKinsey report on the 20 entities or countries that did best. Let me interpret this for you. They were able to look, and all 20 were successful, but some had moved from poor to adequate. Others were at the other end of the scale, as you see. And they measured the kind of interventions that the government took in relation to the school system. And in one of their studies, they classified those interventions as accountability-based, that is assessment and consequences, or professional learning-based, professional development. And you can see at the beginning, if a system is poor, they do need more direction. So it's 50-50. But if you draw down to the right-hand side of the in parentheses, as the system gets stronger, you get more interventions on professional learning. It's another way of saying, wrong driver number one, too much accountability. The opposite of that is capacity building or professional learning. And this is the emphasis that the better systems put on, rising to 78% of all the interactions they did. So good accountability is a function of good data, but it's used as a strategy for improvement. Non-judgmentalism, a bit tricky we find, but that attitude is don't be too negative in jumping to conclusions, because capacity building is the investment to get the initial things moving. Widespread transparency, this is accountability. Transparency results, transparency of practice. And then all of which I think produces what Richard Elmore from Harvard has called internal accountability, which is teachers and principals being accountable for, because they're committed, they're looking at the results, they're able to talk to the outside about it, they really are getting results and they develop it. Human and social capital, words that have been, concepts have been around for a while, but really sharpening in our strategies. Teamwork is way more important than individual work. You need to do both, but you need to also build up how teachers can work together, how they can be led by school principals, how schools can learn from each other. Big part of our strategy. In more detail, you can read about it in terms of what we've done. Learning is the work is our phrase for it. It's not the workshops, it's not the episodic things, it's what goes on day after day. Technology, very seductive, very powerful, increasingly so, but we say although it outraces pedagogy, we've got to turn that around and begin to develop better. And then the coherent set of policies, small number of policies working in the same direction. It really is a system thing. You need an inspirational focus, but you also need the plan of action, which is coordinated around the four drivers. I'd like to, in closing, give you two examples of the strategy, more operational, because I've just given you the basis. And one of them is from the Deputy Minister, Ben Levin, who was the internal change agent. I was the external change agent. And I'd like to just get a sense of how he characterizes. We've worked out these strategies together, but this is what he talks about as the right drivers in action. Small number of ambitious goals. Positive stance, very important as opposed to the negative accountability. Emphasis on capacity building. Remember, this is the top civil servant internal to the strategy. Multi-level engagement with strong leadership in a guiding coalition. This is our group at the center who focuses on the right drivers. And then a few more. Effective use of research and data. Focus on key strategies while managing other issues, distractors we call them. Effective use of resources. And then a system of infrastructure that focuses on the implementation of the task and leads and supports accordingly. So those are some of the ideas of that we get from Ben Levin. And all of the leaders, the minister, the deputy minister, myself as external advisor, Ben Levin, the head of our Literacy Numeracy Secretariat, are all on the same page. It is about focusing in a way that inspires people to put in the energy to get the results. I guess I would describe it, it's neither top down nor bottom up. There's a strong degree of leadership from the center about the goals, about the expectations, and even a degree of assertiveness we have to get going. But that's coupled with a partnership with the sector, with the teachers' unions, with the principals, with the teachers' schools and school districts. And that two-way partnership is what makes it work. And then we get to the work, the actual work of focusing on instructional practices linked to results. And then as we find those working, we spread them more and more, we consolidate them, we build on them. So this work is not, I would say, complicated. I sometimes use the word now complexity, which is a small number of key things have to be done. That's the simple part. To make those key things gel politically in the group, to make the chemistry right, that's the sophistication of it, and you need leaders at all levels to do that. So I wish you well in your conference. I hope I can join you in the future, but have a great conference. Thank you.